to forget, but in the pain you can be brave. Hear me say, I see you dressed in white, every wrong made right. I see a rose in bloom at the sight of you. So irreplaceable, unmistakable, incomparable, darling, it's beautiful. I see it all in you.
For the purpose and the passion for your life.
So this morning, I'm not preaching. I said that because when Brian called me Thursday, he said, I don't want you to preach. I said, well, that's good because I don't even know how. So I just want to share with you. This morning I'm going to share how the past, it's almost been 4 months because September 4th, when Dan Bohai was here, I came forward and confessed. And so I just want to share with you how the last 4 months of my life has been in the journey of that initial moment of freedom and what's come from that. I wrote a lot down because if you know me well, you know that I get distracted easily, so I have a plan. And it just flowed. I just prayed, God, sometimes when God moves in you, actually all the time, you just want to tell everybody everything. Just say, can you just connect to my brain for a minute so I can download all of this? You know what I mean? You just want everybody to know everything, but I believe that God is going to just use my words today to share what I need to, because I can't tell you everything. Some of it's just for me. I'm learning. So the song that just played, Come Out of Hiding, I call that my Jesus love song because long before my confession, I came across that song on Pandora, and I just really felt like God used that as a catalyst to ready my heart to come out of hiding. And I didn't know it at the time. Thank you, Gerald. But I still call it my Jesus love song. I've just shifted from being in hiding to being out. And I know He used it to woo and just to beckon me, because it's a song I've probably listened to more than 100 times, and I never get sick of it. I can just get lost in it. So like I said, since September 4th, I've shifted from being in hiding to being free from secrets and from lies and from pain that I carried for way too long. And I want to start with reading from Psalms, Psalm 139. Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I stand up. You understand my thoughts from far away. You observe my travels and my rest. You are aware of all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know all about it, Lord. You have encircled me. You have placed your hand on me. This extraordinary knowledge is beyond me. It is lofty. I am unable to reach it. Where can I go to escape your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in, how do I say that? Sheol, you are there. If I live at the eastern horizon or settle at the western limits, even there your hand will lead me. Your right hand will hold on to me. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light around me will be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night shines like the day. Darkness and light are alike to you. For it was you who created my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I will praise you because I have been remarkably and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know this very well. My bones were not hidden from you when I was made in secret, when I was formed in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw me when I was formless. All my days were written in your book and planned before a single one of them began. God, how difficult your thoughts are for me to comprehend, how vast their sum is. If I counted them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I wake up, I am still with you. And I'm going to skip to 22. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my concerns. See if there is any offensive way in me. Lead me in the everlasting way. That verse just reminds me, not that verse, that chapter, how it's all planned already. And even when we stray, he has a plan to get us back to where he wants us. And he's always wooing and beckoning. And now that I'm past it, I can see all the ways that he did. He lined it up just right for me to confess that night. How many of you were here when Dan Bohai was here September 4th? Okay. So I'll share with you a little more about it in a little bit so you know what I'm talking about specifically. But I see now that he was beckoning and wooing me through dreams and visions and scripture, through prophetic words of other people, through songs, and ultimately through specific prophetic words from other believers that I didn't want to hear, to receive all that he had for me, which is full freedom. He wanted me to be vulnerable and to not be afraid, to surrender secrets, and to confess not just to him, but to everyone, including my husband and the church body, which I see all of us as, I love that Brad prayed for hunger this morning.
Amen.
Because we're all coming to a table together. Every time we meet, we come to the Father's table. And you have to come hungry. You don't come with expectations, you just come with a hunger for him, for confirmation of what you've read in the week, or just to be filled with good things from him, with his bread and his manna. And so my desire for all of us is to get to a place where each of us feels like we have a specific seat at a table in this place, because we are a community. And I believe too often we believe the lie that we can't trust each other because we've been hurt so much. And I just desire for all of us to become more intimate and know that every time you come in this place, there is a place for you and that you can share. And my prayer is for us to grow, if that makes sense, because this is a place where we come together to the Father's table. Romans 12:18, you don't have to turn there, it's a short verse, says to live at peace with everyone. That doesn't say with some people, it says with everyone, including yourself. So I felt like for years I had peace with almost everybody around me, but never internal peace. I was never at peace inside because of the things I was holding. And it wasn't, you guys, it wasn't that I was living in sin, because I wasn't doing those things anymore that I had to confess. I wasn't continuing them. I'd been saved, I'd been sanctified, but I still was holding on to the lie that if I kept those things hidden, I wouldn't hurt anybody. But I was hurting myself by not saying them out loud and not trusting that God was going to carry me through when I spoke them out. And I'm getting off track. I have this all written down. Okay. So live at peace with everyone. I cannot remember a time of complete peace until September 4th when I confessed. I can't explain to you the peace that came over me. Even the next day, and I know Sean doesn't mind me sharing this, he's actually going to share in a couple weeks his side of the story following that confession that I made. And the confession was, if you weren't here, that when we were dating and when we were engaged, I was unfaithful multiple times with other men. So, standing in front of a group of people is a great place to confess that, right? No. But I knew that that was the opportunity that God had lined up for me. So, to go back to the peace, that next day, he stayed up all night. Obviously, he was angry. This was something, we were approaching our 10-year wedding anniversary, and I had kept that a secret for 10 years, thinking the lie I believed, which I knew it would hurt him, was that he would leave me, he would never forgive me, that it wasn't hurting anybody if I kept it inside since I wasn't in that sin anymore, which was all not true. I do believe that me holding on to that for so long, the guilt and the shame, I believe that's what started a lot of my autoimmune disease symptoms. Just from the everyday stress of holding on to something that grows and festers and lingers. It was like a big, bitter root. And that's the only way I can explain it now. It was like it had gotten its way into all parts of my body, my mind, my life, my attitude. It stole everything. And I can see it now. I never knew that was it, though. I never knew, like, oh, if I confess this, I will be in peace. So the next day, after I confessed that, I came up and grabbed the mic and was ready to talk. And I don't remember what I said because I know it was God speaking through me, because I had no courage or power in that moment, except what was given by Him. The next morning, Sean basically said, we're getting a divorce, you need to find a job, I'm going to find an apartment. And I still had peace, because God promised me, if I confessed, He promised me restoration of my marriage. And even with my husband looking at me with anger and hate, and how could you do that, and how could you hide that for so long, I still had peace. And he looked at me and he said, I don't know how you still have joy. And then over the next couple days, he just kept saying things like, you're so different. And he's still, I just am excited for him to share his side of it in a couple weeks, so I don't want to tell too much of his story, but he could see the change that God had done in me because of that confession. He could see that even though he still thought I was holding on to lies, and we've worked through that, because trust is a bridge that has to be rebuilt. It can't just be built in one day. But God just, I just have to tell you too that the following day, that Monday, Sean came up to the church, and Steph had two of our girls. One was sick, and I was at home, and Jay and Judy were here. They're part of Dan Bohai's team. And they had meetings set up with different people throughout the day. Can I tell them about why he came to church? Okay. He came to the church the next day to get the recording of my confession because he wanted to post it on Facebook and make me look bad. And when he was in the sound booth, he stepped down and he had the recorder in his pocket. And Jay walked up and said, how are you doing, buddy? We've been praying for you. And Sean just knew in that moment, like, I can't tell him why I'm here. I have a recording in my pocket of my wife that I want to post and let everybody see how terrible she's been to me for 10 years and this lie that she's had. And Jay said, we have an opening at 2 if you want to meet with us and pray. And Sean agreed to. And Sean told Brian through text or phone call that he was going to do that. And then Brian called me and said, you have to get to the church at 2 o'clock. And I said, I will, because that's what I wanted. I wanted some kind of prayer time, the time to get together. That wasn't just the two of us, because we weren't accomplishing anything at home when we tried to talk. So God ordained that. I know that He did. He ordained Jay, walking up the stairs, just happening to come up. It was not a coincidence. And I got here, I took Hazel to Josh and Steph's, and as I was backing out of the driveway, I backed right off their ledge like this big. I'm like, no! But I persevered, and Josh got some kind of rig, and I backed out and got to the church just about 10 minutes late. But we met with Jay and Judy for about an hour, and they began to share how so much of their past overlapped exactly what we were going through, and how they'd come through it, and they prayed for us. And Jay used the analogy with Sean, the trust thing. And Sean was asking me any question. I said, you ask me anything. I've shared it all. I have nothing to hide. I just wanted complete transparency at that point, because once you share that huge thing, you may as well just pull it all out. I didn't want anything left. But Jay had, I think, a cup of water, and he said to Sean that forgiveness is not a process. If I want to move this bottle of water, I'm going to choose to move it, and it's moved. And when you choose to forgive, it's done. You say it and you do it. Now trust is two of us standing on opposite sides of this river, and I've just taken dynamite and blown out the bridge. And that's something that we have to rebuild together. And he forgave me the next day. I mean, less than 24 hours. The hardest part for me was probably the next few days of just seeing the sadness and how I knew, that's the reason I never wanted to tell it, because I knew it would hurt him. But I knew now there was nothing between us, and in the days to come, Sean began to confess things that he'd hidden for years. And he'll tell you more about that in a couple of weeks. But now, because of that, we're both free. There's total transparency. You guys, there was months at a time that Sean would sleep on the couch. We did not have intimacy in our marriage because of that shame that I carried. And I'll just say it in a non-TMI kind of way. You know what TMI is? Too much information. That the last 4 months of our marriage, there has been more intimacy than in 10 years. Both with communication and other things. It's been amazing because there's nothing hidden. Just to be able to stand in front of somebody and that thing that I was hiding turned into so many other things. I mean, I would hide spending, and I would hide just little things that there's no reason to hide, but I thought I had to micromanage my life. And like I said, it was a root that just had grown. I think like a month after my confession, there's this rose bush in my garden, and I wanted it gone because it blooms roses, and then like a week later they all die and fall off, and it just makes a mess. So I didn't want it in there anymore, and I was digging it up, and I began to dig around the base of it, which you have to wear leather gloves because roses are mean. I began to dig around the base of it about this big and realized, oh, the roots go out farther. And I went farther and farther, and this root system was bigger than the bush itself, and the roots were thick and nasty and gnarly. And as I pulled it out, and I feel like God speaks to me a lot when I'm gardening about weeding and how he pulls those things out. But even if I had hacked down that rose bush, it would begin to grow the next year if I didn't get that root system out.
Amen.
And that's how that lie was. I had confessed it to God, and I don't believe all sins have to be publicly confessed, but I knew that that was the opportunity that God had lined up for me. And I know why now. I firmly believe that if we hadn't had that follow-up with Jay and Judy and just all the things that came to be, that the outcome would have been so much different. And had I not been able to come to a table with people that I trust and say, this is what I did, and have each of you, many of you calling me and saying, we're here, we love you, it would have been so much different to be doing that alone. Back on track. So that night that Dan came, the first night, Sunday, September 4th, I believe it was, he read a verse from my favorite book in the Bible, which is James. And it was James 5:16, and I'll read it. Or confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. And just as he spoke the first half of it, therefore confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. I knew in that moment that it was me. And Dan said, I don't usually do this. I don't usually call for public confession because I get the aftermath from leaders, how we don't do that in our church. But he did that night. And I literally leapt out of my seat before he finished that verse, and I grabbed a microphone and I stood next to him and I said, I'm first. And I'll tell you why. God aligned that. Usually I'm the one who hesitates, or I wait for others to go first. But that was it. God's predestined time for me. I felt fire in my bones, like if I didn't speak out what I'd been hiding for so long, that it would be too late. I felt like I was going to explode. Really, I felt hot, and it just felt like my bones were on fire, and if I didn't stand up to talk, like that was the last chance. Dan wasn't even finished speaking, and I stood ready, like I said, and I told him I'm first, and I need to confess. And I want to backtrack just a little bit leading up to that moment of confession. Like I said, I was unfaithful when Sean and I dated, and when we were engaged. The lies I believed over 10 years of marriage played over and over in my mind, and they went something like this. I'm not committing adultery anymore, so I'm fine. It's not hurting anyone if I bury it deeper. Keep hiding it. Nobody needs to know. Sean never needs to know. It will only make things worse or cause a divorce. I believed that once I was baptized, saved, sanctified, and forgiven, that I never needed to speak out my past sins. And like I said, I'm not saying every sin must be confessed publicly, but in this instance, God told me to speak, to grab the mic and break the chains. He promised me restoration. That was the promise. After confession, Psalm 119, 114 says, You are my refuge and my shield. I have put my hope in your word. And his word was restoration, and that's what I had to stand on in those moments, is his promises. And it had to be full, complete trust, because to make yourself vulnerable and to be honest it was worse for me than going through death. We both agreed that it was worse than losing our fathers, going through the pain of this, but it's worth it. The sentence I kept hearing as I prepared this was, the hush hush is killing us. That's what God kept telling me. The hush hush was killing me inside. The hush hush was killing my marriage and my life. And this is how God aligned that confession time for me. I can see now. A few years ago, when we used to meet regularly for women's nights, somebody shared about an affair in their marriage, and I thought to myself, that's a person I can trust that shares, that has gone through that. And God told me that's a safe person. Of course, I waited and waited and waited and waited, and then I finally went to that person and I shared just a little bit, and asked them to pray for me. And in those moments, a few years back, I still said, I'm never telling my husband, but I really feel like I need to get this out of me and tell someone besides God, because I was just holding it. So I told her, and more years passed of holding it in. And another thing that I believe we hid very well was just how unhappy we were in our marriage. I mean, we shared it with close friends, but it was bad. It was really bad. There was a lot of talk of divorce, and I know now that God told me that I had to confess that also before our 10-year anniversary, which was September 29th, which another reason why September 4th, I knew I had to get up and confess because our anniversary was coming. And Sean tells me now that he had been researching divorce and planning to divorce me by Christmas this year. So Christmas is extra special this year. Yeah, we can clap for that. Just because of how much turmoil there was on a day-to-day basis. There was no happiness between us because there was not transparency, there was not communication, and we both had so much hurt and so much hidden that we just couldn't function as a couple. Okay, next. In April of 2017, so this year, almost last year, God called me to homeschool, which is something that I also said I will never ever do unless God tells me to. And he started to for about a month. I heard it over and over every morning when I woke up. And so I told the school in May that I was teaching at. And I see now how that works its way into this. If I had been teaching, I think I would have used that as an excuse not to come to dance services. And I'm not saying that's the only reason he called me to homeschool, but I know it's part of it. I know it's part of his plan. Because I would have said, I don't want to be up late. It's the beginning of the school year. And all of the things that go with that. God also called me this year to confess it to more people. Heather Reddick and Dawn, I asked them to meet me at the church because I just have this burning in my heart that I need to tell more people, specifically them. And I met them here late one night, I think it was like 9 o'clock, and confessed to them how that unfaithfulness from before our marriage was just eating away at me. And they listened and they prayed and they loved me, and then more time passed, and I think probably about a month or two before the September service, Dawn said she needed to meet me at the church. And it began with us praying through I went through emotional healing prayer with Dawn a while back, but I never told that part of my story. I always kept that part hidden deep. But she began to pray over soul bonds in me and just bonds I had with people from my past that needed to be broken. And then she said, God is telling me that you need to tell Sean what you confessed to Heather and I. And in those moments, I guess I was in shock and thought, I was very, very angry because I knew it was true. I was very angry with Dawn. Like, how dare you say that? How dare you tell me what I'm supposed to do? How dare you tell me this thing that I've held so deep for 10 years that I have control of, that now I need to speak out. And Dawn offered, she said, you can meet with Brian and I and share it with us all together. We can get a sitter for your girls. We can take the girls for a couple days if you guys need time to process it. I mean, she gave me ample opportunity because she knew the Lord wanted me to confess it. And I did as I do so well, and I let time pass, and I let time pass, and then it just began to consume me even more. And God knows I'm a procrastinator by nature, and I'm sure that's why he gave me the deadline of our 10-year anniversary, like, you need to do it by then. And that's why all those reasons. Oh, one more. My dad passed away in August this year. This is my brother Lars. Our dad passed away in August, and I can see now how God, because before he passed, I wanted to get him here for dance services. I had brought him before. I can see now how if he was still living in September, that would have been another distraction for me not to be able to confess. I would have used that, which is just crazy. God has this amazing, intricate plan that we only see little speckles of. And like I said, our marriage was already, it was not good. I think we were at the point of pretty much hating each other. I can remember, we'd just look at each other with that look in our eyes of disgust. And I see now that we were just disgusted with ourselves. We couldn't love each other. So, like I said, I know I would have used my job or my dad as an excuse, and that's just another way God aligned that specific night for me to confess. So that's why when Dan began to read that verse, why I leapt up. Like, yep, he said he doesn't usually do this, that somebody needs to confess. God told me I had to do it by September 29th. It's September 4th. Dawn told me I need to tell him. And let me tell you, this was not my ideal. I don't really know what my ideal situation of telling Sean was, but in front of everybody at church was not it. For sure. So needless to say, I was very scared. But the hush-hush was killing me, and I wanted to be comfortable in my own skin and to stop wearing a mask. And I can see now how that first act of unfaithfulness in my life, even before Sean, was just another shoot off of an already thriving internal root system of deceit and darkness and shame and guilt. And holding on to guilt and shame and hiding the truth never makes things better. So I see that now that my September 4th confession started a painful and not easy, worse than mourning a death, process of releasing my dark and gnarly roots into the light. And not gnarly like, that's gnarly, like gnarly, nasty, gross, thick, pull it out. If any of you garden, you know that if you pull out weeds, you can't just sit them on the soil because they will reroot themselves. They have to be like cast onto a sidewalk or out from where the good things are growing so the sun can scorch them and kill them. And that's what it's like when we get that stuff out and put it in the light. All that can come back in is light. And I didn't even realize that I do this because I imagine this root just taking up my heart. That once that was pulled out, now there's this big open place for good things to grow, for light to come in.
Amen.
And my secrets were like the roots of that rose bush. Nothing good could grow in their place until I got them out totally, not just parts of them. It was very hard. It hurts to confess how much you hurt someone and to apologize without excuse. I believe that these secrets I kept, like I said, started my autoimmune diseases. About 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with a skin disorder that I won't even go into. That's extremely painful and not fun, we'll just say that. And also fibromyalgia and lupus symptoms and eczema, brain fog. Like, I could deal with the pain, but the brain fog got so bad that there were days that I think I fantasized about not being alive. And I haven't had that brain fog in 4 months. That was the worst. I know that this release has brought about so much healing. I still have pain and I still have migraines, but I know that just internalizing all that just made it so much worse. The mental stress of harboring and maintaining a lie is very strenuous. I lacked joy, I was depressed, I was afraid of hurting him. I had no desire to be with him. I tried medications, I tried food, I tried muscle relaxers, antidepressants, essential oils, alternative doctors, herbs, minerals, massage, chiropractic, injections. I went to counseling. We went to marriage counseling, but I never exposed that particular secret. I cried a lot. I had suicidal thoughts. I was angry. I tried, like I said, marriage counseling. I isolated myself. I pondered the logistics of divorce, as Sean did too. I read scripture, I read books, I did altar calls, I served, I prayed, I loved, I was sanctified, but the root, that dark, bitter secret, was still there. Even with all that, I still never took it out. I have a few verses I'd like to read. The first is, just again, I want to read that verse that Dan read out that night, James 5:16. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. 1 Timothy 6:12. Maybe I don't have that one here. I have to look that one. So I'm going to go to Proverbs 28:13. Whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy. Psalm 32:5. Then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. So not just the sin, but the guilt that comes with it is forgiven and taken away, because guilt does not come from God. He convicts us, but he does not give us guilt and shame. I chose to listen that day, to confess it, and I knew there wasn't any turning back, because I really felt like I was going to explode. I trusted God's promise of restoration, and now I had to hold up my part and do the hardest thing I've ever done, which is tell the truth. But I know God never fails, and I know he never gives up on us. Deuteronomy 31:6 says, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid or tremble at them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you, and he will not fail you or forsake you. And that's something I clung to in those moments of confession. Lamentations 3:22 says, the Lord's loving kindnesses indeed never cease, for his compassions never fail. And I knew that he'd never failed me, but still, in my mind, there was part of me that wanted to keep it. The one thing that I'd never given over to him or trusted him with. 1 Corinthians, I'd like to read from 1 Corinthians. If you guys want to turn there, I'm going to read about 13 verses from 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 1 through 13, the excellence of love. If I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but do not have love, I have become a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy, and know all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. And if I give all my possessions to feed the poor, and if I surrender my body to be burned, but do not have love, it profits me nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, and it is not jealous. Love does not brag, it is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own, it is not provoked, does not take into account a wrong suffered, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices in truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. But if there are gifts of prophecy, they will be done away. If there are tongues, they will cease. If there is knowledge, it will be done away. For we know when perfect comes, the partial will be done away. When I was a child, I used to speak like a child, think like a child, and reason like a child. And when I became a man, I did away with childish things. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, just as I also have been fully known. But now faith, hope, love abide these three, but the greatest of these is love. And I know now that I could never really grasp God's love until I trusted him with everything, including that. there was still that place where his love couldn't come in, that I was holding. When I chose to listen and uproot it, there behind left a gaping hole, only to be filled by light, by complete love, by joy, by freedom. The hush-hush was no longer killing me. He freed me from my inner noise and chaos. Sean and I came across this movie, The Heart of Man. It's not just for men, it's the heart of mankind. And we actually are hoping in February to lead a study. And it really just goes hand in hand with the last 4 months of our life, and we're so excited to share it with other people. I want to read just a part from the participant's guide. A community, wrong spot. What happened through Christ at the cross opened the door even more widely to freedom, strength, and safety with the Father. When we believe in Christ, we get to risk a life without masks, without hiding. His table is a place where you can be known deeply and don't have to worry that the Father is ever offended by the real you. In fact, he cannot wait for your next conversation. And there's a quote here from Shauna Nyquist, and she describes what is so powerful about coming to the table. Like I said, coming to the table together. We don't come to the table to fight or to defend. We don't come to prove or to conquer, to draw lines in the sand or to stir up trouble. We come to the table because our hunger brings us there. We come with a need, with fragility, with an admission of our humanity. The table is the great equalizer, the level playing field many of us have been looking everywhere for. The table is the place where the doing stops, the trying stops, the masks are removed, and we allow ourselves to be nourished like children. We allow someone else to meet our need. In a world that prides people on not having needs, on going longer and faster, on going without, on powering through, the table is a place of safety and rest and humanity, where we are allowed to be as fragile as we feel. The table is a place where there is no hiding, where we can share our brokenness with others. Some of us, tired and weary of isolation, discover that we are being called by God to create such a community for ourselves and other like-hearted friends. Maybe even, I don't know if any of you have seen the movie yet, but we're going to show it in February. Risking vulnerability is the very best kind of terrifying, and I so agree with that. That was the most terrifying thing I ever did, but it's so worth it. The alternative is staying hidden and unknown, perhaps pretending to those around you that you're doing okay, even though you're in incredible pain. To feel and experience others' love, we have to trust them enough to let them into our real selves. It takes great courage, but it's worth the risk. Not all of us are able to fully enjoy the meal when we come to the table. Sometimes we're preoccupied and we struggle to stay in the moment. Maybe that's how it is for you. Half here and half in your own head, islands away. But never the Father, never God. He's always there, and he sees what no one else can. And even while he is blessing and enjoying everyone at the table, he understands that we might be islands away, and he knew that with me. He knows that with you, if you are. And he's already planning how he will bring us back home. He promises in his word that he goes, he's behind us and he's before us. And he's always planning how to bring us back home, how to bring us out of hiding. God works on our behalf our entire life. He's always ahead of us, preparing a way back to unity and intimacy, a wholeness with him. And we always have a choice to be present, to receive his love, to become and know and be fully known, and to not see him through a lens of shame, but to be free. The hush hush was killing me inside, but now I sing praises and I am transparent. I've been singing and reading scripture over my husband, which we never did. We pray together. It's amazing. Our disagreements now that normally would last days, weeks, last like 5 minutes. We pulled out of the driveway once and we had disagreed about something. I don't even remember what it was. And normally it would turn into like, well, either him or I wasn't going to go where we were going because we were upset with each other, and it would turn into the silent treatment for a few days and then it would blow up. And 5 minutes later, we were good, and we said sorry, and Sean stopped the van at the end of the driveway, and he looked at me and he's like, that just took like 5 minutes, not 3 days.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
And it's because that shame was gone. It wasn't another shoot off of that root of shame just to hold and harbor and be bitter about. Because we've been transparent and honest, it's so much easier to forgive and believe and trust. I feel like my sight has changed. My thoughts have changed. My sight as in I look at him with adoration now, where before I would look just with this, I don't even want to say the thoughts I would have when I looked at my husband, and I know he thought the same things, like, why am I with this person? This is terrible. Why are we doing this? And now I can just stare at him and love him. And let me tell you, we have told each other things that, not even just the confession, but I mean just deep things that both of us agree that we've never told a soul in our life. Thoughts and things from our past and from our childhood. This has just been, like I said, just pulling and pulling and pulling, because once you start pulling, you may as well keep going because you don't want to have anything left. And it's been so hard and so good. I've been forgiven fully by him, by God. I already was by God. My stress level has plummeted. I am known fully. God always knew me fully. But now I feel like my husband knows me too. And that's a big deal. It opened a door of free communication and confession in our marriage. And our marriage is being restored, and that was God's promise. And I got to go to the prayer conference in Ohio with Corey Jones, and it was so neat, just a confirmation. And he shared the definition of restoration. After all of this, he shared that restoration isn't restoring something to what it originally was. When God restores, he's taking it back to what his original plan for it was, which we've never experienced in our marriage, because we're thinking restoration, like even if we go back to the beginning, that wasn't good. Like there was never a good time because we both brought into it so much stuff. But when God restores, he's restoring back to his original intent.
Yeah.
Not just for marriage, but for other relationships, for our life. And when Corey said that at the prayer conference, I was like, that's what restoration means. And I wrote it down. I was so excited to tell Sean when I got home, like, this makes so much sense. I put Christmas equals no divorce. I looked at Sean on Christmas and I'm like, we're still married. Like, that's the best Christmas present ever.
Woo!
And on September 29th, we went on just a little mini vacation up to Frankfurt and spent a couple days together. And even though it was only not even a month after all of this, it was a beautiful time together. We just enjoyed each other's company. I can't put into words how much different it is. We both, like, he'll look at me and say, who are you? Because God has changed so much. I don't feel like this person with the black hood on walking around in my shame anymore. I'm just so free. And like I said, it wasn't as hard, and it was and is worth it. And that is the end of my story. Not really. It's the beginning.
Amen.
Thank you for hearing me.